Bienvenidos a este podcast Misión GJ.
Mission GJ, and at this time we have Apostle Erickson Salazar. This is so good to be here sharing the prophetic for the house. And as we usually do, this is nourishment, daily nourishment, kingdom daily nourishment. And at this time we have Apostle here, and we've been looking at the world and at the discussions that we've been having and under different topics. On the Daily Word, we've seen it. On the different teas, the different podcasts, we've seen that this world is going from bad to worse. And we're sure of that. Different signs of the end of the world are clear. Christ is coming soon, and that is a truth that we cannot deny. But in the midst of all this, how can we face all the situations that we are dealing with today? Apostle says, like the latest monologue says, which is about having courage. This is what we really need, courage. A lot of courage, specifically in what we believe. And one of the things that you have to take into account is that as a ministry, we have created a platform for every member of this ministry to connect, because it is the only way that you'll be able to remain, that you'll be able to face all the different demands of life. And Lewis says, and really, at this time, that's what we need the most, courage. Apostle says, imagine that. The Life Manual says that the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and only the violent will take it. So, violence as such, anything that has to do with kingdom will be violent. But life itself suffers violence because life is going out of control to its destruction. So those that don't have a connection to the kingdom through His word, you know, they have no way out. They are dislocated. But those that know that there is a God that we have to depend on, then we know that violence, we will defeat it only connecting to the prophetic. So Lewis says, then that courage and that violence comes with a foundation. And Apostle says, that's what I mean. The courage is not something that you're going to come from within. It's something that you feed, something that you nourish. That is why this platform is nourishment, to be able to awaken the courage in God's children in order to face principalities and powers of evil that each day will come to face and to come against you and against the purpose of God in you. And I know that you're thinking, why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? But I've always said it. I've always said it, but nobody has understood. What everyone is turning their back on, which is the connection in the house, everything that we share here, is nothing more than nourishment that comes to awaken your spirit, in order for your spirit to rise up against your flesh, your soul, and the world, and against all principality of powers and evil that doesn't want you to manifest kingdom here on earth. So Lewis says, so then when I start connecting and nourishing myself, and then I understand the modality, then I no longer allow myself to be cornered against my flesh, which is one of the topics, one of the points that you discussed in the monologue, is that the flesh becomes cornered to the situations. Yeah, and Apostle says we give pity. And Lewis says, so then when I understand that, then I start taking that on and I start seeing that courage. Apostle says, courage comes from knowing who you are. You're a child of God. Those that are children of God are children of God. I was speaking to somebody recently, a person from outside the country, and I was saying how important it is to have a relationship with the Father. And I was remembering that when I was in my office, that nobody has the freedom to just go to my office. They have to go through different protocols. But when you see the children, the young people of the ministry, they go to my office like it's nothing. And I remember that a lot of, those that were kids then, now they're growing, and they would come in and say, Apostle, I want to come get a piece of candy from your office. In the midst of a serious meeting dealing with serious topics, they would come and grab a piece of candy, and they would continue. Joshua, my youngest son, they would come in and just grab candy, and I would love that so much, because I said that is how God wants us to be with Him, to be comfortable. And the devil, for the longest time, through his different manifestations of afflictions and attacks, depression, fears, which is a constant. That is why I used to say, when we were talking about depression, that depression happens to everyone. What happens is also that many people have been able to deal with it, but it's something natural that needs to happen. And furthermore, it comes from a physiological aspect in your being. There are people that are fools, and when you give them a sandwich, they become bright. So it wasn't that they were fools; they were just hungry. Me, myself, I would get aggressive when I was hungry. And some members of the ministry would say, did you have coffee already? Did you eat? And I was like, why did you tell me that? And then I realized that after I got food, I would be a sweetheart. So this is a matter, there are matters of physiology that change the person's behavior. So when you know this, you handle things differently. Oh, I'm anxious. Oh, maybe you haven't slept well. Sleep and then see. So you have to have courage before anything for you to connect to this prophetic, which is what's going to give you the strength. If people knew that everyone that wants to connect to the kingdom, it's going to have to face violence, then they will become more violent. Yes. Everything that the ministry shares is wealth in order to unleash kingdom in you. Or to free kingdom in you. The generational marks are not going to applaud you and say, go do it. This is good for you. No. But you, as an emotional person, you say no to that. You don't want the encouragement. And you might say, yeah, I see some people that do well, but I don't like to be encouraged to do well. And it's the kind of thing that you fight against. That is why at the end I've learned to allow each person to face their own disgrace and consequence, because sometimes they don't understand if it's not via consequence. They have every way out. They have everything to do it right. They have everything to be wealthy in every context, material, spiritual, moral. But they choose not to. They have a different way because they like it that way. And Lewis says, let me live my own experience. And Apostle says, go enjoy your own experience. My pleasure. I don't burden myself. Yeah, there's an emotional part which hurts because you say, why? And sometimes it's not even because of them, because they cause me more trouble. So it's because of me too. So it's kind of selfish too for myself, because you say, man, let's do it now to waste less time. So courage is something that it's fed. It's something that is fed through the word. Every day I wake up, weak. I'm not splendid and strong each day. Most of the days in my whole life is slow, anemic, bored, depressive. Yes, because that is normal. That is what we want people to understand. And if I allow the entities to get on top of that condition that I've explained to you, that could even be physiological, which, from the context of the physical context of a man, if I allow the marks that come to visit me, that if I allow them to use that and say, you see, you're in the same spot, you're doing the same thing, you're actually worse. What are you doing? What are you up to? And then the emotions look and say, wow, I don't have anything. But God's children don't look at things with the body or with the emotions. We look at things through the Spirit. And those that look at things through the Spirit are looking at, are dealing at how Elijah and his servant, one of the soldiers, he was saying, oh, the army is coming against us. They're coming against us. And Elijah was at ease and peace. And the servant was like, look, see how they're coming. And Elijah said, open his eyes so that he could see what I'm seeing. And there was an army protecting them. That whoever crossed the line and came against them, they were going to have their heads cut off. And many of us have that army protecting us. And those that would see that army wouldn't be afraid, eating junk, because they think that they're nobody. You have to have courage. It's not based on you being tough. My courage is based on what He has done. The courage doesn't come because of you, but because of what you already know. But how do I know if I don't read? How do I know if I don't hear? How do I know if I don't connect? Those that lose one of these words one day, each day becomes weaker. And those that don't connect to it, they will continue to lose strength, and they're being stolen. Those words are being stolen. So everyone who's screwed is because they want to be screwed. It's not that God bless somebody. No, God doesn't bless anybody. God doesn't bless anybody. Because everything and everyone has already been blessed. We are the ones that have to connect. Life itself is a seal of blessing for your life. That's it. It's over. Now, that life, that blessed life, feed it with the life manual. Hello? And it's not that I'm going to pick up the Bible like religious people say. No, you don't have to read the Bible. You have to connect with the ministry that teaches you and guides you to the prophetic and apostolic. That is why Philip told the Ethiopian person, do you understand what you read? And he said, how am I going to understand if there's nobody to teach me? There's nobody to explain it to me. And then he gave him the 30 studies right there. He gave him the 30 studies, and after I gave him the 30 studies, he said, you wanna baptize? You wanna get baptized? And he did it. He connected to the kingdom. He got courage. Everyone who connects to this will be on a high. They will be diligent. They'll have courage. Everyone, I repeat, and I'm saying this again, everyone who puts God's things in the second place, they're getting everything stolen from them. You're a fool if you do that. A fool. Those who put the things from God in second place. That's it. Lewis says, do you want to let people breathe after that one? Because you left them without breath after that. So Apostle says, because courage comes when you feed your spirit. Because the spirit, as long as you don't feed it, it'll become weak. So then your emotions, your soul starts believing that she's in control, that it's in control. That's why we have to submit the soul, because the soul is fed by emotions, by sensations, desires, senses. Those are the ones that connect to the soul. And those are the ones that want to dominate. And you think that's you. The one that has to develop those desires and say, that's who I am. No, you are just marked. You are marked. That will only be able to deliver the true self through the life manual. And that's a progressive deliverance. It is constant. It is all the time. Of course, because you're not going to free somebody like you 30 years of bondage with just one prayer. You're not going to deliver somebody like that. I pray for you and I might be able to get rid of the lies that you have in your hair, but that's it. I was just teasing, yeah, but the truth is, as human beings, we are incapable and insufficient. We are weak. Any fly can shake us. Any snake makes us afraid. Any roach. That's it. We are fearful by nature. Now, when you connect to the life manual, you take on that courage, because you have to have courage to go against depression. You have to have courage. You have to have courage to go against poverty. You have to have courage. To be somebody that wants to keep moving forward, you have to have courage. To go against carnality, you have to have courage. You know how many offers we receive? Nobody is exempt of that. We all have the same battles. This has nothing to do with ranks and colors. No, everybody. Even Jesus faced that. But what happens is that if you do not pay attention to your connection, you will be blown up. Because even connected, it's through violence. That you know that because of your connection, every day you see the different shortcuts that open up, the different pathways that open up for you each day. Only because of your connection, for you to be able to move forward. And you say, wow, so those that are not connected, what happens to them? No. It's nothing that happens to them, it's that they're already destroyed. They've been fooled and tricked and everything's gotten stolen from them. That is why they become conformed. Yeah, because, some of us have to be poor because not everybody can be rich. Not everybody can be wealthy. And then you start seeing them fall for philosophies and foolishness. You're a child of God. Get out from there. What's the show? There's a purpose of God in you. God wants each of us to understand that we were born to follow, to be sponsored and co-heirs of Christ and be sponsors of the kingdom. So you need to have the powers. What happens is that you don't want to follow the path based on what the Father said. You want to do what you want to do. Those that talk about courage have to be tough. Lewis says, yeah, that's deep, because one of the examples that we see even in the Word and in the studies, that whole battle, the weakness that we see starts in the mind. All that it's in the mind. So we have to strengthen our mind with the knowledge to be able to face and feed that courage. And Apostle says, of course, it's like I say, the important thing is for you to say, okay, feed the spirit, feed the courage. Okay, how do I feed it? We have a connection, a prophetic connection. There's an apostolic structure designed for us to connect to the prophetic. And that prophetic is what feeds courage in us. Courage to face life itself, from the natural aspect to the spiritual aspect. Furthermore, the natural aspect is simple. Knowing how to face each of the demands you have is something simple. The tough thing is when you have to have courage and guts to face the spiritual aspect. That is very delicate, because in the spiritual world you cannot make mistakes. Do you know why? Because the enemy takes advantage of your mistakes, of the space that you open up, the legal right, the rights that you give. The enemy is always trying to figure out which way he's going to take advantage of you. The people think that the enemy is the one that comes against us. No. The enemy doesn't come against us. We go against the enemy. That is why the kingdom of heaven suffers violence. And see how deep. If the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, then look at the ones who are going to face that, the violent. The violent will take it. So there's no way to be comfortable or passive or something simple or weak. No, it speaks of guts, of courage, of ability. Of jumping over the air. It's aggressiveness. Aggressive, because the enemy wants to steal the kingdom from us. The enemy wants to deviate us. And that is why the kingdom of God suffers violence. The block that you get to connect to the ministry, that is part of the violence that comes up for you not to connect to the kingdom. That's why I get sleepy when I want to read the word, the daily word. Oh, that's why the internet goes weak whenever I'm going to give a study or take a study. Yeah, that's why the work of the kingdom that you're going to do is going to suffer violence. Oh, that's why, yeah. So what do I do? Easy to explain. It says the violent ones will take it. You have to be violent. You have to be violent. Each time that me, in doing this for 20 years, sending content, because people talk about content, but to nowadays that we're sending content, but I've been sending content for over 20 years, 360 days out of the year, not stopping one single day. And there are people that sometimes say, oh, I've done a lot, I'm going to take a break. And we haven't stopped one single day. But what happens? That is because you're clear that the violent are the ones that go against the opposition, that go against the ideologies and philosophies that want to limit you in the physical, human, spiritual material, everything. And then Lewis asks, how can I be that violent person that the word says? And Apostle says, connection. It's the only way. The only way that you can awaken that courage in you is through connection. Because you have to feed your spirit. So your spirit wakes up with the word itself. Your spirit wakes up with the word itself. So connection is what will bring courage out of you. I've seen people here, very, very easy, very phlegmatic, and the connection has made them violent and aggressive. That is why those that are Joshua are very defined. Not meaning Joshua the ministry, people from the ministry, but Joshua. Oh, okay, let me clarify. All the members of the ministry are not Joshua's. No. Joshua's are those that are violent. You're going to know that somebody is a Joshua because of the violent, not because they're part of the ministry. Not all that are Joshua's. There are people that are camouflaged, infiltrated, everything. There's a little bit of everything. That's normal because that is how a community grows in a territory. And the word says it. But for you to understand who's a Joshua, those that are violent because of their violence. See how that person faced everything and accomplished a mission. And Lewis says it brings to mind a mission within the experience in the mission that if I remember correctly, you talked about this in one of the podcasts where Pastor Charles was sharing in some country, and he had to give a study, and he had to do the violence of leaving the gathering, go somewhere else. Oh, this was in Colombia. Go somewhere else to give a study because it's more important to save a life and normal. And Apostle says, sometimes I'm in another country and there are a few Joshuas with us, and you see that one goes here and the other one goes there, and we're all giving, everybody's giving a study, even though we're in the midst of a sharing, or somebody's giving counseling, somebody's giving a study. And sometimes I even say, wow, in this ministry they don't leave you alone, ever. I've even said that myself. I've been affected by it because everybody's doing something, and that's normal here. That's, on a trip working, it's so normal. Everything has been integrated as a body to do your job. They don't care if there's a party, if I'm here, if I'm there. No, one moment. They go aside and they do what they have to do, and that's being violent. Violent. And Lewis says, what about those people that say, I'm going to do it, but when I get home? No. Apostle says, no, it's the violent people do it, and they're violent. Because what happens is, if people want to accommodate their agenda, that's fine, that's valid. Meaning, if somebody can take the study because they're doing something, fine. But from your part, given the study, you should do the violence to do whatever it takes. There's a commitment. And if there's something that is specific of a child of God, is to assume and keep their commitments. That has nothing to do with third or fourth. That has to be that way. That's why the apostolic doesn't depend on anyone, because there will always be excuses. So that's why so many things that you say, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Well, what about the violent? What about being violent? Where's the courage? So Lewis says that's why the apostolic is so radical. And Apostle says, and it's radical not to be radical, but because the kingdom of heaven suffers violence. It's the violence that comes from the enemy to get you to get cornered, to not do this, to not do that. And then the apostolic says, no, you need to do it. And that's it. The apostolic is not waiting to see what the other one thinks, because no. It's not like that. This ministry was not built over fearful people, on the backs of fearful people. No, it was with warriors. And I say warriors not because they're tough or violent, but because the amount of the threat from the enemy wanted to make him scared, and they brought that courage out. Because I'm going to tell you something interesting. The word says that the enemy is like a roaring lion. He's like a roaring lion. He's roaring, but there's another one that roars louder. The Holy Spirit is not a joke. And I was saying something deep a few years ago. I was saying the apostolic is worse than the devil. Meaning that if the enemy is determined to take you out of the way, the apostolic is determined to deliver you, against the devil, and against the world. The apostolic goes against you, against the devil, and against everyone. At the end, you are not grateful because, the apostolic saved me. No. But you're grateful because the apostolic saves you in spite of you. Overlooking my stupidities, my lies, my deceit, my manipulation, my theft, and still took me on. There are people that in that process where you're taking them on, they're not Joshua yet, but they're being processed to turn them into a Joshua. Are you understanding now? So, if there were many that thought were Joshua, they're not. They're members of the ministry, yes, but they're not Joshua. Now, if you want to be Joshua, well, really, this is not for you to want to be Joshua. No. If you're here as members, you're either Joshua or you're Joshua. The plan is that if you're in the ministry, you're going to end up being a Joshua, or you're going to have to leave. The apostolic is not a joke. And you know that everybody wants to compare us. This ministry, I come from this ministry where we used to do this and we used to do that. This is the way we do things. So this is easy. There's an open door. You can leave whenever you want. Because again, the only mechanism here is to be a child of God. There's no other strategy. This is not emotional sensors or feelings. No. This is a truth that comes against evil that is not playing, where people die second by second. So each day that you can awaken a child of God, so that courage within them can waken up, when you awaken the courage of a Joshua, then you see things become lighter. And that is what we're trying to do, awaken warriors. There's a text in the Word that says David and his valiance. And it was a group of warriors that would go to battle. And it was impressive. The violence and the courage with which they would go to battle. So God's children are clear that God shed his blood for this mission. And today, what we're doing is being co-heirs, colleagues of Christ in this mission that he started. And if he gave himself in the cross and gave his blood for this mission, you know what that means? That you got to give yourself completely until you die, so that you're clear. This is how it is. This is about me giving myself until I die. So this is not about, I'm going to retire and I'm going to go live in a mountain happy with my family. What? What do you mean? This is until the grave. The party is not here. The party is not here. This is where we have to run ourselves dry here. And I'm going to run myself dry. You can't leave anything to the Antichrist. I got to spend it all for the kingdom. I want to invest it all. Everything that I have is for the kingdom. And those that are in this ministry around me know that. That have been seeing that for decades completely. I'm not carrying a whole lot of loads or a whole lot of baggage. There's no need. Less is more here. Because the wealth is not represented in material things, but it's represented in the structure that you have. That is why, like the word says, the word teaches us very clearly that to have courage is to know that everything works for good according to those who take on his purpose and follow his calling.
Gracias por sintonizar nuestro podcast Misión GJ. Nos vemos en un próximo episodio.